Check, 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 check. Okay. Yeah, so I decided to do a live stream this morning because I was bored. I actually have a day off for once and have some free time. It was this and or mow the yard. Um, so yeah, I kind of just came up with some stuff that I wanted to talk about. Normally, I'd be talking more about specific political stories. I might talk about the Mexican tariff stuff and other things like that. But let me get started here. I want to talk about when I wrote Whining Bullies. I mean, like, they call them like cry bullies, or basically people that want to go out and insult and attack other people and then claim victim when someone responds in kind. It's something that we see often. So that's what I wanted to focus on. A lot of times, what I'll talk about, I'm on several websites like Above Top Secret, other places like that, where people are just blogging, and I love having that kind of discussion. I wish I'd have more people join me on here because I think discussions are better than just long-winded monologues like I want to do on this channel. So I think you get more out of these, more out of a dialogue. So when I post about stories or news events or philosophy or politics or whatever on different websites, you kind of get some people's reactions. Sometimes you get things that aren't expected, or it enables you to change your views and things like that. So I'll get started here. One of the things you hear about often that's said, particularly about the Democratic Party, but this could be applied to others as well. I think you see it with the establishment Democrats. Again, not saying necessarily your friend that's Democrat or the average person, but people at the top level, is that they project. So the things that they're accusing others of is actually things that they're doing themselves. So like a good example of this would be Russia collusion. We know, for example, that the Democrats, Hillary Clinton's campaign, the DNC, actually did collude with Russians, and that they paid to get disinformation from Russian sources and use that to smear Trump. When they accuse him of pay for play or things like that, we know that oftentimes that's what they do. When they accuse someone of racism, we know oftentimes that's what they do. They accuse Trump of, he won't accept the results of the election, and then that's exactly what they do. They don't accept the results, as we see with both Hillary Clinton and Stacey Abrams in Georgia. That's the big talking point now, right? Stacey Abrams, she won the Georgia government election. Wait a minute, didn't you all, including Hillary Clinton, just spend an entire election season in 2016 saying, oh, if you don't accept the results of the election, you're hurting democracy? But now, right on cue, they were just projecting what they actually do. I believe this about a lot of times when people just scream racism. I think it's secretly because they're racist, so they accuse everyone else. Well, I know how I feel, so that's how other people must feel. And it does happen on the other side as well, right? You used to have the, the anti-LGBT, the ones, religious people that were the strongest coming out against it. And then you'd find out that they're, doing drugs with gay hookers and things like that. Like, there's some schadenfreude in this idea of people projecting. One of the things I see over and over again is this projection and a total lack of self-awareness, or maybe there is self-awareness and they just don't care because they're so narcissistic and entitled, of people that want to go out and attack people and smear them and use slurs or whatever, use whatever language they want. And then as soon as someone responds in kind, oh, they're a victim. How dare, oh my goodness, people are making fun of me. I've gotten threats. When I was threatening people, it was okay. But when people, when I made fun of people, it was okay. But when people make fun of me, I'm a victim. That's terrible. And this is happening more and more. And it's because we've incentivized victimhood culture. This has to do with cultural Marxism and the idea of everyone is either, you're all just a bunch of groups. Like, most of the groups of things you can't even control, like your age, your gender, your sex, your sexual proclivity, your ethnicity, your religion, things like that. Basically everything. You're not an individual, you're just a sum of those parts. And so those parts are either oppressors or oppressed. And so we now have currency to being oppressed. So you have every incentive in the cultural institutions of power and what's basically the dominant cultural hierarchy now to play the victim. And so one of the best ways to do that is to make yourself a victim. So you go out, you do things that would predictably have a backlash, and then when the backlash comes to you, you say, see, I'm a victim. And we see this happening over and over. The reason that it's important to talk about it, the big story, and I did a video on that, or part of my last live stream was on this, was Carlos Maza from Vox News who went after Steven Crowder, and because Crowder made fun of him. Crowder, for those of you that don't know, is a conservative comedian who also does a lot of political commentary, has his own channel, pretty successful on YouTube. Now, he does tell offensive jokes, which I'm fine with. I don't care about offensive jokes. I could see how some people would like it. That's okay. Turn the channel. Like, that's fine. But the irony is, Maza himself is an incredible bully that's going after people, which I don't want Maza censored. That's not what I want. Feel free. He can make fun of people all he wants. But he thinks it's okay for him, and you constantly see this. You see this like with Antifa, for example. They could go out and poke and attack and swear and destroy your rally and surround people and intimidate them. But if someone strikes back, oh, it's horrible. That's what we see with Maza here. So, for example, there are tweets. He's upset because even though he's self-admitted gay, his Twitter handle is gay wonk. He's upset because Steven Crowder a couple times called him a lispy queer. Apparently is what he called him. Which, you might be offended by that. Okay. That's fine. But we see in return, Maza's constantly insulting white people, calling people racist, calling people bigots, swearing at them, cursing. Even worse, that's all just rhetoric. That's all just words. I don't care about any of that. Maza's actually taken it a step further, though, and said he thinks conservatives should be physically attacked by throwing objects at them so that they are afraid to organize in public. That's taking it a step further. But that's his mentality. It's okay for me to advocate and say that you're a scum, you're Nazi, you're not even human, you deserve to be mocked, you shouldn't be deserved to have a voice anywhere online or in the public square, and we should physically assault you to keep you from doing that. But if I respond back to you like, hey, shut up, you big mouth, now I'm the bad guy because I insulted him, now he's the victim. It's absolute insanity. And it happens over and over and over again. Now again, yes, this can happen on the right or with people that aren't politically identified as the establishment Democratic Party or progressives. But it is happening far more with those people, with the left and with the progressives. And it's something that we need to start to call out. My personal take on life is you don't punch down. I don't care what insults you're making. That's fine. But you basically, if you're going to get into that game where you're making fun of people or you're advocating silencing people or something like that, you don't get to complain when someone comes back at you. Now, there's a difference. If you're getting death threats and stuff like that, that's always unacceptable. I get that. But you have to understand, when you call an entire group of people one-tooth racist scumbags or something like that, you make fun of them as, based on their ethnicity or the way they vote, there are going to be people that push back at you. Again, that doesn't mean you deserve death threats. But if you call someone, if you make fun of someone for their appearance or for being a redneck or something like that, and they come back and make fun of you because of your characteristics, you don't get to act like somehow you have some moral high ground. You don't. You've lost that ground when you got in the mud. And that's okay. Most people have thick skin and they understand, yeah, if I'm in the public square, people are going to make fun of me. Especially if I'm the type of person that's insulting and attacking people regularly. They don't demand then, oh, I should be with impunity allowed to say whatever I want about whatever group I want. But if they respond to me, they should be censored. It's arrogance. And anyone who's objective and is looking at this from the outside can see this is just pure narcissism. It shows that there is no interest in fairness or in, having a civil discussion. This is just a power struggle for them. That's what they believe. They don't have a problem with hypocrisy. We see that over and over. I mean, constantly. I could go on and on and on and on, You see this when, they'll say, oh, if you mock a woman or a person of color or someone who's gay, or if you challenge them, then that's racism or that's bigotry. Right? They'll say that. You can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. But then, as soon as you have a black conservative, like Ben Carson or, Kanye West, I guess, then it's okay to call him Uncle Tom or racial epithets or make fun of him in any ways whatsoever. You can't make fun of Obama's daughters. You can make fun of Trump's daughters. If you mock the way Hillary Clinton talks or dresses, that's sexism. But Sarah Palin, that's okay. It's okay to mock her. You could never make rape jokes. They're always insensitive and terrible. But rape jokes about Donald Trump getting raped in prison and things like that, that's okay and funny. And on and on. By the way, that happened. There were magazines that put out. You can't have an article that's got a target over a district that happens to be Democrat or a Democrat running it, or that's a threat, that's terrible. But you could repeatedly have articles with pictures of Trump in crosshairs, and that's no problem whatsoever. It's constantly, I guess, a theme as I'm doing these shows and videos. The theme that's the most consistent with what I talk about is, I don't care what your stance on life is. I just, I can deal with someone who completely disagrees with me and still respect and appreciate that person more than someone that's a hypocrite and has double standards. You believe something that's controversial? That's fine. Just stick to your guns. Don't say, you think it's okay, and I'll get to this. You think it's okay to mock autistic children? Fine. I don't care. But then don't get upset when someone mocks you or mocks other groups. And that's exactly what we see happening. You think that dealing with Russians means you deserve to have an investigation where your lawyers get raided in the middle of the night? That's fine, as long as you think it should be the same with both sides. I disagree with you, but that's fine. At least that's consistent. And there are people like that out there. I have no problem with that. But the people that are hypocrites that are just advocating, I should be allowed to do, me and the people I like should be allowed to do whatever we want, and the other side should be held to a completely different standard, is absolute garbage. Like, for example, I think it's racist if you're prejudging people based on their race, particularly in a negative connotation. And that you use that. So, that's it. There's no caveat. There's no, it's only in certain instances. But that's what we see from many of these people on the left. Well, you can't be racist if you're black, and it's okay to judge white people. You can make statements like white people are bad because of their skin color, but it would be totally racist to say black people are bad because of their skin color. We could look at the historical abuses of white people and say that leads to them being crappy people today that deserve, that should have to apologize. But we can't do that with other colors. That's racist if we do that with other colors. I argue this all the time. That I'm not one of these people. I don't care. I think white identitarians, the Richard Spencers of the world, the Ku Klux Klan, the neo-Nazis, they suck. I'll argue with them all day. They're terrible. But identitarians of any race are terrible. I don't care if it's black, if it's brown, if it's Asian, whatever. It doesn't matter. If your main point in life is, my race is special and great, you suck. You're uninterested. I'm more concerned of you as an individual. I feel the same about your sexuality. I don't care. If that's I'm a gay person. If that's your identity, that's the first thing about you, you want people to know, your entire world's based on who you have sex with, you suck. You're not interesting. I don't care. Now, if you happen to be gay and it's something that comes up, that's fine. I don't mind hearing about that. But these people, that just want to be identitarians and focus on groups, I have no, regardless if it's coming from the right or the left, I have a disdain for both groups. I'll listen to them, but whatever. But when we look, I think society's pretty good now in accepting that racism against what we call minorities in this country is bad. It is. I agree. It should be called out when we say it. I think it's overhyped. It's overblown. I think overall we've been getting less racist in those ways. But now there's like some kind of vengeance mentality where it's like, and so now we could go after, the majority. We could. It's in vogue to go after whiteness. So yeah, there's always going to be, and when you comment on why that's bad, people say, well, the KKK and there's other races. Yeah, sure, those people are bad. They have no power whatsoever. When they do enact terrible things, we should call them out for it. But do we have courses and curriculum in universities about the evils of blackness or brownness or Asianness? Nope. That would be incredibly offensive. There would be riots. There would be mass boycotts if a school was like, hey, we have a new curriculum on the dangers of blackness, but we have plenty on whiteness. Why is that? Or if you had classes about, entire curriculums about violent and oppressive femininity, tyrannical matriarchy. Oh my God, you can't do that. How dare you smear women? But the tyrannies of the patriarchy and masculinity being toxic, that's fine. We could have classes on that. We could discuss that. That could be a mainstream opinion that everyone agrees with. And that goes to this straight pride march. I think it's stupid. It's slightly different. I get what the gay pride march is about because they've been marginalized in the past, and this is them kind of wearing that as a badge of honor, having a parade. I get it. I get that straight people still to this day haven't been marginalized like the gay people were. But it's at this point, other than some, a vast minority of people that don't have real political or cultural power, most people aren't bashing gay people. They might disagree with gay marriage or something like that or think it's a sin, but they're not out there bashing gay people. So with this straight pride march that's happening in Boston, I think it's dumb. I understand they're just trolling. But, people are offended by it. Why? They want to celebrate their straightness? Okay, go for it. Stupid, but fine. The same with men's rights groups. Though the men's rights group is actually more serious because there is tons of issues where men are disadvantaged by law. You can't point to me any laws whatsoever on the books that disenfranchise women. People talk about the gender pay gap and stuff, which is a myth. We already have laws in the book that say you can't pay people less based on their gender. But we see tons of laws, or at least the application of them, is how it's geared towards affecting men more than women. So, for example, try to have a custody battle, for example. See who the courts favor there. Or let's say a man and a woman are both accused of the same crime. The man in every single case is more likely to have the legal system deal more harshly with him. More likely to be arrested, more likely to be charged, more likely to be indicted, more likely to serve more time for the same crime, more likely to have harsher conditions when they're in the jail, more likely to be denied bail, right? So we see all that. That's what I'm talking about, this projection and this hypocrisy. If you're going to focus on these, be an identitarian with that, then you have to be so across the board. Yeah, right, more men imprisoned, everything, Which, by the way, I'm kind of getting off on a tangent, but that's okay. That's what I do anyways. One of the things I always tell people, right, when you talk about blacks being disadvantaged in the legal system, that's fine. I don't mind having that discussion. We should be able to have the discussion. But it should be a fair and open discussion. We should be allowed to discuss data and reality without being accused of being racist or something like that. But just for a second, just hear me out here. People will say, well, how do you, I'll say, why is the legal system racist towards blacks? And they'll say, well, blacks are more likely to be imprisoned, blacks than whites, blacks serve longer times, they're more likely to be arrested, they're more likely to be charged, etc. And you can say, well, is there a chance that it just happens they're committing more crimes or something? No, that's racist. That's bigoted. You can't look, all they do is take the data and they assume that racism's the answer. You can't look at other potential answers. So, okay, my point is, if that's true, that's fine. Let's accept that premise for a minute. And so, the only relevant fact is, we could look at black people and look at white people and look at a comparison. And because the legal system seems that there's more people that are treated more harshly that are black, then that proves that there's a bigotry or racism. You know what, if we're going to separate groups, you know what groups affected far more from one group to the other than whites to blacks is men to women. So the amount that blacks may be 10%, or I don't have the exact data in front of me. I have looked this up before though. Blacks might be 10% more likely to be charged or indicted or serve 10% longer terms than whites on average. Between men and women, that number skyrockets. It's way above that. So if the system's bigoted towards blacks because of those numbers, but those numbers are way worse from men towards women, then can't we say the legal system's bigoted towards men? And it's ironic because the same people on the left that are pushing this, well, blacks are oppressed, the legal system oppresses them, they're also mostly identitarians that also say the world's out to get women, the system's against women. So you're like, okay, here's a data point based on your own rationale that shows the legal system is far harsher to men versus women than blacks versus white. So will you now say that the legal system is bigoted against men and you're going to be fighting to stop the bigoted legal system that locks up men? They'll say no. And you know why? Because men are more violent. Men do commit more crimes. And they don't even understand the irony of what they're saying. Yes, you're right. That is true. What you're saying is we shouldn't just look at the data and assume bigotry is the reason for it. There's all kinds of other factors. Yeah, Josh, you're absolutely right. There's all sorts of factors that could weigh into why blacks, it could be racism. That could be part of it. Bigotry could be part of the reason why men are more sentenced than women. But it could also be those groups are more likely to commit violent crimes. Not because they're racially inferior or gendered inferior, but because all sorts of things. Like black communities tend to live in incredibly high poverty rates where people are living in very close proximity. That's nothing to do with their race. That's more likely to have crime. If you have low poverty, you're more likely to not be able to get a good attorney. All sorts of things. Now, you might say, well, that shows that we need to help these black communities. That's fine. That's a reasonable discussion. By being honest, that's a better chance to actually getting to a real solution to help those communities and to get those numbers and those discrepancies driven down. But when you just want to scream racism, that doesn't solve anything. And so that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. But to get back to this idea of these cry bullies, that just want to go out there and mock and do whatever, and they know, I do think that a lot of them know that they'll get pushback and then could use that pushback as being a victim. So some of the examples we could see. I already talked about Carlos Maza. He could insult Crowder. He could say whatever he wants. He could even take it a step further and say conservatives should be assaulted. They should be made to not feel comfortable to be in the public square. But if you insult him, then that's too much. You need to be censored. He doesn't have a safe space then. It's ridiculous. How about the media with Trump? Constantly we see this. They'll attack. Call him out over and over. He's a Nazi. He's a racist. He's a bigot. He's a rapist. He's a spy for Russia. But when he says something back to them, they're like, oh my God, can you believe the president's insulting people? Trump at one point called out some judge and they were like, you can't call out judges. That's a respected office. You have to have respect for that office. Meanwhile, they spend every day insulting Trump, who's president. I'm the type of person, I don't care what office you have, you should be allowed to be insulted or denigrated. That's fine by me. But you don't get to say, well, the offices that people that we agree with control are untouchable, but we'll feel free to mock the president all we want. Meanwhile, these same people were going ham when the idea of making fun of Obama. Oh my God, you have to respect Obama. And it works on the other hand too. If Trump's going to go out and make fun of people, okay, people are going to make fun of you, Trump. You have to understand that. And I think he gets that. Sometimes he comes off as a little too whiny for me. But here's a good example. How about, speaking of the media specifically, how about Don Lemon from CNN? There's an article on Drudge today about Don Lemon's thinking of calling it quits because, he's just been getting harassed so much and he has had people, Now listen, if people were using racial slurs or homophobic slurs, whatever, yeah, that's bad. But still, he had no problem. I watched on his show while he laughed while he had, I forget the guy's name, but some supposedly Republican pundit on there talking about anyone who is for Trump's border law was a one-toothed redneck, racist bigot. Don Lemon, he thought that was hilarious. So you insult that entire group of people, and then when they push back at you, you go, oh, this is ridiculous. And that's what the media have done constantly. They say Trump, when he calls out, Omar Alon for saying something like that he deems anti-Semitic, or I guess it was about 9/11, for belittling 9/11, and they said, Trump's inciting violence against Omar. But when they call Trump a racist, Nazi, Hitler, bigot, and then Trump people are getting beat up. People with MAGA hats are getting beat up. We see it every day. That's not considered racism. Or that's not considered incitement. Don Lemon's one of the most bigoted, racist, ineffectual, activist, non-journalists on television. Constantly, instead of debating people's points or saying he thinks they're wrong, attacking their characters, saying they're bad people. You're racist if you don't agree with them. And then when people respond in kind, he says, oh, I'm such a victim. I just can't handle this. The media in general, they can't take criticism. They think when people are giving them the bird at Trump rallies, that's violence, that's terrible. Can you believe that, we don't feel safe? Yet they're out there doxing kids from Covington that are getting death threats. They're outing people that make videos of Nancy Pelosi that are now getting threats. See, the threats they get, that's terrible, and we need to look into that, and it's just not right. But when they're attacking other people with slurs and stuff and they're getting threats, well, hey, that's just life. The double standard is ridiculous. Yeah, Don Lemon is a joke. There's a reason he won Worst Journalist of the Year in 2014. He epitomizes everything I'm talking about here. Someone will just make fun of you, call you out, and then as soon as you respond, another example, this might come off sounding callous or get me in trouble. Did you ever see, I'm so tired of this world we live in where you can't just be honest anymore. We have to lie about all this crap. So now we have to lie and pretend there's no difference between men and women. That's garbage. In general, on average, men are physically stronger than women. Does that mean there aren't plenty of women that could, whoop me? Of course not. I'm not saying that. There are women that are incredible that could compete with most dudes, outperform most dudes. But on average, we know the truth. Does that mean that women are somehow inferior? No. There are plenty of things on average that women are more successful in than men. It's just a fact of life. It's not bigoted to say this. Have you ever been at a bar or a party or something where you see some chick just getting in some big guy's face, slapping him, pushing him over and over and stuff like that? Now, we know societally that guy can't hit that woman back. So because of that, she's allowed to be physically aggressive. She's allowed to be abusive. She doesn't see a problem with it. But man, if that guy just slugs her back in kind, all of a sudden she's a victim. It's terrible. You can see videos of stuff like this on YouTube if you've never seen it in person. But I know my friend Josh has seen this stuff in person. It's the exact same type of thing I'm talking about. Except instead of physical violence, we're just talking with words. You can push and prod and push and prod and push and prod and push and prod if you're one of these people on the left. But as soon as someone says the slightest thing back to you, oh, I'm a victim. I just don't feel safe anymore. And coincidentally, this might not be a popular opinion, but it's one of the things I'm sure we could all agree. We don't want bullying in schools and things like that. But oftentimes the story's more complicated than it first appears. Most times both sides have some sort of bullying going on. Yeah, it might be, in kind, one side's way worse than the other, and I'm sure, whatever, deal with that. I don't have the answer to bullying. But I'm just saying, we always want to oversimplify things. Oh, this person's the victim and this person's the bully. And that's not the case most times. And that's particularly not the case in the instances I'm talking about when you see with these people on the left. They'll defend Antifa, right? Show me one instance of a Hillary rally or some kind of leftist rally, right, where a bunch of Trump supporters showed up, or the Proud Boys or one of these groups, showed up to that rally and started stuff en masse. Show me that instance. Because it seems like every time we'd see a clash between Antifa and the Proud Boys or Trump supporters and people that hated Trump, it was almost always at a conservative rally. Because the Antifa people, the anti-Trump people, they show up to that rally looking to start some stuff. And then there's a fight and it breaks out. And then the media narrative's always, look at how violent the conservatives are. Can you believe this? If it was the other way around, if we started to see, for example, Cornel West just spoke at Clay University a couple years ago. Left-wing, kind of someone who sticks up for the black community. He's a black professor. I actually think he's really intelligent, and even though I disagree with a lot he had to say, he's a very entertaining speaker. But a left-wing person. Imagine if the university that I'm around, that I went to see him speak at, there was a rally of a bunch of people. We don't want this guy speaking. Get him out. It would have been big news. People would have said, why? What? Is this racism? Is this bigotry? You don't want this guy to speak? That's absurd. He should be allowed to say speech. And they'd be right. Leave the person speak. Imagine if Hillary Clinton or people connected to her were getting boycotted on campuses. They couldn't speak. So it's okay for them to show up like we saw at the Berkeley riots and just beat the crap out of people that wanted to hear Milo Yiannopoulos speak and riot and breaks things down. But if there's response in kind, if people start to fight back, wow, that's terrible. This is exactly the story of the Proud Boys. I didn't agree. I'm not advocating violence for politics. If you're directly struck, directly hit, or directly, face physical violence, yes, in self-defense, you can come back. But I think it's bad to organize a group saying, we're showing up to fight Antifa because we know we'll be there. That's just escalating the violence. But for them to be demonized, be totally cut off, for all social media to kick them off, for payment services to kick them off. Tim Pool has a good video on this I watched just yesterday, where, not only were all the Proud Boys websites basically deplatformed on YouTube, Facebook, blah, 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 all that, but actually their own personal websites where they were selling merch, reporters actually went to the banks like Chase Bank and said, oh, are you gonna let these violent thugs use your payment processing? And so they lost their payment processing. Not only the organization, but individuals within the organization lost their own bank accounts. And why? Yeah, I'm sure if you might say, well, we think they're violent, they're scumbag, but you don't do that for the other side. They're not demonized like that. Where are the reporters then? They're constantly, well, they're called Antifa. That's anti-fascist. So you mean the name shows they can't be bad? No, violence is violence. Don't be a hypocrite. If you're going to go after one side, go after the other. But constantly these people push and prod and come to these rallies and get in people's faces and surround them. And then when inevitably the clash breaks out, it's the other side. You even see this in a microcosm, like you'd watch Black Lives Matter. I used to watch all the time where there were riots or protests or whatever, or Antifa riots or protests. Watch their interactions with the police. Now look, I'll be the first to call out when I see violent and unacceptable behavior for police. But oftentimes what you would see at these rallies, because you'd have activists filming it and you'd hear them, woo, and they're chanting and doing whatever. And so the police will line up and be like, you can't be on the street. They'll throw stuff at the police. They're hurling insults. They're attacking the police. And then, as soon as the police throw the guy, whoever it was that threw a punch at them, throw them on the ground and start arresting them, fascist! They're screaming, help! Oh, I'm hurt! Even if you watch Cops, you see this all the time, right? These tough guys that'll charge at the police or something, and then as soon as the police throw them down, start handcuffing, oh, it hurts! Stop! Oh, no! I need to go to the hospital. It's like, oh, yeah, now you're the victim. When you were the aggressor, when you're physically punching and attacking people, that's okay. You're righteous in that. But as soon as someone responds, even with legal authority, legitimately, like a police officer, now all of a sudden they're fascist pigs, we need to call them out. And it's a tactic. They know what they're doing. They're provoking a predictable response and then saying, see, in a vacuum, just looking at that response shows that our opponents are violent or nasty or bullies. And it's garbage. We need to start calling them out. By the way, it's not just right-wing people like me that are calling them out. Check out Jimmy Dore, who's a left-wing progressive. He has a whole thing on Carlos Maza. He hates Steven Crowder, by the way. But he talks specifically you know what I do when people insult me? I get threats all the time. I don't listen to them. That's it. That's what I do. I change the channel. You don't get to say, I think this person should be censored. Because guess what happens when you do that? Then that excuse is used more and more and more. And all of a sudden it's used for ideological reasons. Every time in history people have called for censorship, it's been used by people to then go after people that aren't violating the initial rules because it is advantageous politically for them. You should always, when you're advocating something like that, silencing someone, say, put the shoe on the other foot. Would I want the people that disagree with me to have this power? And you can't tell these people advocating this on the left that enough. They don't get it. With the Trump-Russia stuff, it's the same damn thing. I just say, listen, if you're saying that this investigation was okay, what you've now agreed to is Trump can now pay a British spy, a French spy, whatever, to go to, let's say, China and say, whoever his opponent is, Joe Biden hired hookers to pee on him, and by the way, a bunch of people connected to Biden are Chinese agents. Now Trump can legitimately use the FBI, other intelligence agencies, to wiretap people in the Biden campaign, to send actual spies into the Biden campaign, to unmask people in that campaign with the spying that they commit on them, to release that evidence to the media, to tell world leaders before the election that Biden might be a Chinese spy. All of that's legitimate. You've just said Donald Trump's allowed to do all of that. You've signed off on a sitting president's allowed to use the FBI and other intel agencies as his personal investigator, as his personal spy to go after their opponents. Can't you see that's going to happen? And they don't get it. How about this? I told people on the left over and over, I said, this idea of these Russian trolls being a big deal is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So I'm to believe that a couple dozen Russian trolls using Facebook and Twitter and Pokemon Go swung the election, spending like what, $500,000 or $50,000? That outweighed the trillions of dollars that were spent by Hillary. Not trillion. It was like 1.5 trillion was spent, I think, between the Trump and Hillary campaigns. But almost 2/3 of that was Hillary's campaign. Don't quote me on that, but it's close to those. Hillary spent way more than Trump. But we're supposed to believe this pittance, Russians' Facebook trolls affected that. And I said, be careful. I told left-wing people, smart people, by the way, a lot of these people on the left that I'm friends with, I'm like, be careful saying this, because it's going to be used to come after you. Now this taint of, and by the way, Russian troll, everything's Russian trolls. And what do we see happening? Oh, now the Russian trolls are advocating for Bernie. And now they're advocating for Black Lives Matter and LGBT rights. Oh, you know, those causes all must be suspect. They're all Russian now. Couldn't you see how that was predictably going to happen? Couldn't you see how smearing Trump as a Russian agent would be used by the exact same establishment to smear whoever you want on the left that'll come out? That's what we see happen with Jill Stein. That's what we see happening with Bernie Sanders. But they have no self-awareness. They literally are just like, well, yeah, when it happens to me, it's bad. When it happens to you, that's a good thing. I could bully you. I could call you names. I could make fun of your race. I can make fun of your sexuality. I can make fun of your appearance. No problem. As soon as you say the slightest thing to me, that's a huge problem. Now I'm a victim. It's childish. It's absurd. And the hypocrisy runs throughout our political system and our culture, just our day-to-day lives now. You see it on your Facebook feed. You know? I don't put much on Facebook, but I see it there, where you'll have people that are like, you know, insulting someone, just going at them, and then when people respond back, they're like, oh, everyone's after me. It's unbelievable. So, some other examples of this. Meghan Markle, the, princess now in the UK. She was on the Larry Wilmore show. Larry Wilmore is a comedian. He was like, used to be on the Daily Show, heavily anti-Trump. But she was on that before the election, calling Trump a racist, a bigot, a misogynist, etc. You know? Basically saying the president's really terrible. So when the comments were brought up to Trump, Trump's like, I didn't know she was so nasty. The comments, he's referring to the comments, but it doesn't matter. The media went, wow, how dare the president say that a princess is nasty? Like, don't you have any self-reflection? She just called him a bunch of worse stuff than nasty, didn't have a problem with it. No problem with her calling the president that stuff, but him saying, I think those comments are nasty, oh, that's terrible. You can't do that. How does that make any sense? How is this a news story? It was a story for a week. And no one spoke up and was like, oh, okay, if you think that he's terrible for making those comments to a princess, then I assume you think she's a terrible princess for making those comments to a president. Nope. Speaking of hypocrisy, just on the, not really on this bullying aspect, but how about Remember all the media saying when Trump would say lock her up about Hillary Clinton, that was terrible, it was hurting democracy, blah, 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 blah. Now, which, by the way, Hillary Clinton committed, we know, crimes. At least he could point to, this is exactly what I'm saying the crime she committed, why she should be locked up. When Pelosi says Trump should be in prison, she can't say why. For what, Russia collusion? Their savior Mueller proved there wasn't any. For what, obstruction of justice? Not only has it not been proven, there's no evidence of it. They didn't have the problem when, I don't remember Pelosi calling for Bill Clinton to be locked up for obstruction of justice. And we actually had proof of that. He committed perjury. We know that. But where's all the media now? All this media. Trump saying lock her up. What a disgusting person. He's terrible. He's hurting the country. Pelosi says Trump should be in prison. What's their story? Their story is, Sean Hannity used to say lock her up, and now he's upset because Pelosi said about prison. Yeah, there is some hypocrisy in that. That's fine. Go after Hannity for it. But the very people that are going after Hannity have no self-awareness that they are even more hypocritical because they made such a big deal about how Trump saying lock her up was hurting the country. And now they're defending Pelosi saying, but Pelosi saying Trump should go to prison. I don't care. They both should be inside. I don't care that Trump or Pelosi said either of that. Yep, so, okay, fine. But if your take was Trump saying lock her up was so horrible, then your take should be, okay, Pelosi saying Trump should be in prison, equally horrible. It's just stupid. It makes no sense. The same, like I was talking about earlier, Trump might not accept the results of the election. That'll destroy our democracy. As soon as the election's over, Trump stole the election. We don't accept the results. Stacey Abrams should be the real... racism meant that votes were canceled and Stacey Abrams should have won the election in Georgia. It's unbelievable, the lack of self-awareness. Now, the next example I want to talk about, I have to bring up an article here. So I read this article last night before I went to bed. And for those of you who don't know, my current job is I work with people with disabilities, autism, things like that. The story is, school board apologizes after autistic boy given most annoying award. I'll just read a little bit of it to you. A Northwest Indiana school district offered an apology this week after an 11-year-old autistic boy's special education teacher gave him an award for most annoying male in his class, according to WLS-TV. Fifth grader at received the award during a recent end-of-the-year fifth grade luncheon at the school. His father was in attendance. He said he didn't want to cause a scene with other parents, so I left with the award on the table and tried to walk away, only for the teacher to announce, "Hey, you forgot your award." According to the report, this kid is a nonverbal autistic and occasionally rocks back and forth and shakes. You'd think one who would understand the conditions of autism and have patience to deal with children who suffer from autism. I just thought, so I put the story up on a board that I talk on above Top Secret. And to me, the story was like, really? Now look, I like comedians that are incredibly offensive. Like, I've heard Doug Stanhope make some really offensive jokes about particular people, that are disabled and things like that. Even kids, right? It's one thing for a comedian to do it. My point is just, you're sending your special needs kid to school every day. You would like to think that the actual teacher isn't going to basically mock your condition for things that are as a result of his disability or his autism. That seems pretty cut and dry. Didn't advocate for her to be fired. I just thought, hey, this woman should be ashamed of herself. It's pretty ridiculous, right? So what does this have to do? To my surprise, most of the comments on what I posted were people like, oh no, this kid should have been made fun of. Are we going to treat the kid, are you into political correctness? Do you want to treat the kid softer because of his disability? Should he be treated differently because of that? First off, yes, in some senses the kid should be treated differently because of his disability. Like actual physical things. For example, if someone's paraplegic, there are certain things that have to be treated differently. We try as much as possible to treat them as the same as everyone else. But by the mere definition of the disability, there have to be some things that are slightly different. The way you get access to places. If you have autism, there's you have to be aware of sensitivity to light and things like that. The way you're communicating with someone with autism. Right? So yeah, there are differences, Now, in general, I agree, though. We should treat people with disabilities and things like autism as much as possible. I think that, people want to be treated normal, and so we try to treat them as normal as possible. Is it now normal for teachers to insult disability? Is that what we're talking about now? I don't recall that. I recall people, we had special needs students when I was around in school. I don't recall being in elementary school and it's just normal. I don't recall teachers basically making fun of anyone for disability. Did they make fun of the kid that was poor for having ratty clothes? Or the kid that smelled bad because, his parent was in a bad situation with parents and they didn't, tell him to get showers and things like that? Did teachers do that? I don't recall that. The first thing I'll get to the bullying part here in a minute. But I think that what happens is I'm as against PC culture as anyone. Again, I don't have a problem with a comedian making this joke. If I don't like the joke, I just won't listen. My point is just the teacher? It seems to be a bit much, right? And the people that are like, oh no, the teacher should have made that joke. I think there's a danger of going too far. Now I'm being PC by thinking that. And what happens is there's a tendency to be like, oh, it's almost hip and cool now to be counterculture, to be like, yeah, toughen up the kids, man. Yeah, you should, I'm so anti-PC that, I'm for making fun of teachers making fun of autistic kids. That's how anti-PC I am. It's like, dude, that has nothing to do with being anti-PC. It's just common sense that you don't want teachers acting like that. Now, I will say one criticism that's at least a more effective criticism that people have said about me is, well, how do you know he got that award because of his disability? Well, he's nonverbal, and he says he has tics and shakes and stuff because of his autism. And he's at the point where his dad said that he didn't understand the concept of the award at all. He was just happy to get something shiny. So I would say, using common sense, we could see that his disability probably affected why a teacher and other kids might think that he's annoying. That just seems to be common sense to me. But anyways, regardless, I just think that we are in danger of going too far. So my point was, well, if that's toughening them up, there were several comments like this. We should never treat children differently. People should never be, you should treat everyone the same. Okay, well, here's some things. If I was bit by someone, if an adult bit me, for example, that didn't have a disability, that knew what they were doing, and they came up and bit me, I would punch them in the face, right? That's what you would do. What if you're babysitting a toddler and they bite you? Well, we can't treat them differently. And people are like, well, that's different. Why? We're literally talking about, should teachers make fun of autistic kids for their disabilities? No! It's pretty simple, I thought. Anyways, regardless of what you think, this isn't a huge story or anything, but to me it's just like, what the heck's wrong with people? Anyways, the point that I wanted to bring up, I find it funny that some of the people that responded to this, and they started making fun of the autistic kid. Did he eat the award? Did you ever watch Autistic Kids in Three-Legged Race? It's funny. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, for me, I don't have a problem with it because these aren't the teachers. They're not making the joke directly in front of this kid. Whatever. You want to make fun of autism online? Have at it. I don't care. If I don't like it, I'll change the channel. I don't want any punishment to come to you. But what's funny is when the people that make those jokes are the exact same people that I constantly see typing things out like, this community is just too right-wing and it makes fun of left-wing people and it needs to stop and we need civility. Right-wing Trump supporters need to realize they need to stop saying mean things about people that don't like Trump. Meanwhile, I'll insult the autistic kid. I don't have a problem with you insulting the autistic kid, but you don't get to have it both ways. You want to insult the autistic kid? That's fine. Then don't be surprised when people make fun of you. Don't act like you're a victim. And to me, it's indicative, I mentioned earlier about punching down or punching up. You want to, for me, a good motto in life is this, and this is one of the things I criticize Trump for all the time. You don't attack people like that unless it's in, direct response to someone that are basically, in some senses, less powerful than you. You want to make fun of someone? Make fun of the smart kid in class, not the person with a disability. You want to criticize lifestyles? Criticize the wealthy person, not the homeless guy. You know? Stuff like that. You want to complain and cry and whine when someone who should be on a reasonable level with you, like adult, that doesn't have a mental disability, you think it's bad if they insult you. Oh, by the way, the same people making that argument, they're the first to say Trump supporters are all stupid, Trump supporters are rednecks, Trump supporters are bigots, Trump supporters are racist. Then the next thread, someone will type, these Trump supporters, they're making fun of non-Trump supporters, and it's really bad. It's really harming the community. It's really, it's a bad thing. They need to learn to not be. We need to come together. Oh, and I'll make fun of the autistic kid. So what it's like to me is like, oh, you can't hang with the adults, right? So you make fun of the autistic kid. And then when I call you out for making fun of the autistic kid, what have I told? Oh, stop being a snowflake. I'm being a snowflake? I didn't say you shouldn't make fun of the autistic kid. I just said you suck. You deserve to be made fun of. You're incapable of having an intelligent conversation, a joking conversation, and keeping your own with an adult that can hold their own. So, you whine when an adult makes fun of you, and you make fun of autistic kids. That's what you do. Now, I'm not signaling out a specific person. I'm not going to use names or anything like that. But that's the type of stuff that it's so funny to me. Is there a more epitome of this mentality that we see pervasive in a lot of the left at this point? I can make fun of autistic kids, but don't make fun of me. That sums it up to me. I just thought that was so funny. That's basically what prompted me to do this video today. It's like, you can't even make up a better example of the stupidity than that. So, when you see all these cries of censorship, when you see people like wearing victimhood as a badge of honor, keep in mind, a lot of times the people that claim to be the biggest victims are engaged in the exact same behavior that they're criticizing. We see it with Carlos Maza at Fox, with a V, Vox, cheering for all this censorship on YouTube. But if he would get censored, oh my goodness. And by the way, I'll talk about this briefly. I saw Jimmy Dore. I love Jimmy Dore. I disagree with Jimmy Dore's politics. You should check out his channel, though. He's a progressive, disagree with his politics, but he's got a couple things going for him that I like. One, he's brutally honest, and he'll go against what's perceived as his side or the left if he thinks that's the truth. Which I respect. Again, I respect someone that I think is being honest and not a hypocrite, even if I disagree with him. So I respect that. Second, I think he's hilarious, which for me, that goes a long way. Being funny covers up a lot of warts to me. I think that's great. So I like Jimmy Dore, but the video he put up about Carlos Maza and trying to get Steven Crowder censored, it's funny because Dore's like, screw Crowder for being a bigot, for making these homophobic slurs. Who cares about him? He's a no one, blah, 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 blah. Homophobic slurs, that is to be, condemned. But it only goes one way. Dore should know he's a comedian. I've heard fantastic comedians make homophobic slurs. Dave Chappelle, George Carlin. I don't know if I've ever heard Bill Hicks, I've heard. Certainly comedians on the left that aren't that fantastic, like Stephen Colbert. They make these jokes. It's okay when they're making the jokes directed towards Republicans. Now, I'm not saying Jimmy Dore's saying that. But I will criticize for this. As a comedian, I think you should understand when a fellow comedian is insulting someone and using these slurs, that doesn't mean that he's denigrating that whole community. Even if he doesn't believe that gays should be able to get married, whatever. That's what comedy's about. Look at some Patrice O'Neill. He was a fantastic comedian. He passed away. But there's an excellent video of him on YouTube where he's talking about that joke that you found offensive or that bombed or whatever. That comes from the exact same place of the joke you found hilarious. And comedians are just trying all the time. They're putting stuff out there. Some of it will fail. Some of it will be deemed offensive. But you don't get to be, a great example of this is like South Park. And all sides do this. I always think it's hilarious where you can watch South Park, and all these groups will think it's funny. Like, it's funny they're making fun of Jewish people. Oh, it's funny They were making fun of, Jesus. What? They made fun of Muhammad? That's terrible. This show's terrible. It's bigoted. Oh, it's funny when they're making fun of Trump. That's hilarious. What? They're making fun of political correctness? That's terrible. And it goes the opposite way. When they're making fun of political correctness, oh, that's hilarious. But then they make fun of, 9/11 conspiracy people. I won't watch that show anymore. They make fun of it. It's like, no, it's all joking. It's all okay. Dave Chappelle made fun of white and black people. Don't care on his show. Funny. If I don't like it, I'll change the channel. But I just thought that was the one part of Dore talking. I like Dore's stance on this, where he was just like, Carlos Maza sucks. That was the one part I was like, okay, well, you're really going after Crowder. By the way, he then admits he barely heard of Crowder. So it's like, for you to just be like, well, someone made a gay joke, so they must be a terrible, offensive person. No, that's not the case. Now, you might look into what Crowder said. Otherwise, Jimmy Dore might look in and say, I can now see in context, and I still think he's a terrible, offensive person. Okay, fine. But that's not what Dore admits. I don't really know the guy. He's just taking the one little segment that Maza put out and saying, this guy's clearly a homophobe bigot. And that's because Jimmy Dore suffers from some of the same tribalism where anyone on the right wing must be a bigot or whatever. Trump's a bigot. And whatever. I mean, a lot of these people on the left that are against the Russiagate conspiracy, they hate Trump, and it's constantly racism and his supporters are this and that and that. It's like, well, I disagree with all that, but at least they're being honest about the Russiagate stuff. The other thing is, a lot of things you'll see, people always couch this in the terms of like, well, yeah, of course someone like Crowder, it's not a problem, but then it's a slippery slope, and then people we like that are decent people will be censored. No, that's garbage. One, the idea of being against censorship and for free speech is that the most important time to apply is speech that you disagree with. We don't need free speech, really, so that someone could online talk about, food reviews with nothing controversial. Of course, that's never going to come up that's not a free speech issue. It's those on the fringe. That's who you need to protect. And so this idea, well, okay, now I get it. For the sake of trying to convince people that might not agree, you might want to say, yeah, but they're going to come for other people too. But I don't care for the acting like, well, okay, this guy deserved it, but no, other people are getting censored that don't deserve it. Nah, that's garbage. You're either with the speech or you're not. Now, clearly, there are limits. If you're on there and you're like, hey, everybody, go attack this person or something like that, yeah, that's different. That's advocating real-world violence. That's fine. If you're, things like that are different. But someone telling a joke that you found offensive, no, sorry. So, yeah, that's kind of my take on this idea, and you're starting to see, they're calling it adpocalypse or whatever, but I'm lucky in the sense that I'm not monetized on YouTube, so I have nothing to lose. But there are a lot of people that are, and this is what happened. The bullies come out, they make fun of you, you respond in kind, you get censored. That's how it's gonna be. So, what else was I gonna talk about today? Let me see. The Mexican tariffs, right? Yeah, what a great story. So, this border, the entire border situation, it just blows my mind. The fact that we don't have a real media is disgusting. I mean, there's some people that try. Again, on the mainstream media, a lot of times Fox News, I don't like a lot of their stuff. I really don't. But they do have real news people, like someone like Britt Hume or Brett Baird. They're okay. They're more stable news people, not really opinionated. I do like, for opinion, I like Tucker Carlson. There are people on the left that are better, even though I dislike Jake Tapper, and I think he bought in and helped spread this garbage, anti-Trump everything, Trump's a Russian agent stuff. At least he'll ask difficult questions of even Democrats running for office and stuff if they're on his show. So I respect him a little more than the Don Lemons or the Chris Cuomos or Rachel Maddows of the world. But the fact that we had a media and Democrats that for so long were like, there is no border crisis, there is no border crisis, there is no border crisis, is mind-blowing. Now the numbers are coming out that in the last year we've had over 1 million in 1 year apprehended. That's apprehended. Now, many of them get apprehended and then they're put in a facility for a while and then they're sent off into the country. And then 9 out of 10, the numbers don't show up to court. So if they get arrested for something later, they might get deported. Otherwise, they're here. Numbers are showing that illegals have 300,000 children a year in the United States. Guess what? Those children are now U.S. citizens based on our laws. Now, this is a country of a population of what? 300 million? A million a year apprehended let in. We don't know how many weren't apprehended. A million a year. Where do we have the room for all this? How are we going to pay? The same people that are okay with this also want free health care for everyone. So we have to pay for all the health care for them too as well. This is insanity. And they kept saying, oh, the numbers have gone down over time. Well, they've been going up the past 2 years. And we're talking literally now 100,000 a month apprehended at the border. And it's been getting worse. The reason it's been getting worse is, imagine, one, I don't begrudge anyone who is living in a bad economic or whatever situation. You're in a bad country. And you say, I want to get to a better place, whether it be for myself or for my family. You do you. But our system of laws is set up to work on the behalf of the citizens of this country. If we tried to help and had total open borders and said free healthcare, free food, free shelter for the entire world's poor, this country would end immediately. And not just financially, not just through starvation, not just through disease, but also environmentally, which is something the left seems to be concerned about. Mass import of poor people, it's not because the poor people are dirty or genetically inferior. It's because people with lower resources tend to overuse environmental resources. It has nothing to do with their skin color or anything, because when Tucker said this, people were like, oh, you're racist. No, it's nothing to do with that. You take a bunch of poor people in Appalachia, the environment, the way they'll use the environment is going to be worse than well-off people living, in Martha's Vineyard. The skin color is irrelevant. And so we know that we can't accept this. It's a sad fact of life. Look at it in your personal life. I don't want to see any poor people in the town I live in, but I can't open my house to everyone. You do what you can privately. But you take care of yourself and those around you first. Our government has a moral authority to use. They are servants of us. That's what it is. The tax dollars they spend, that's our money that we're giving over. The citizens of this country. You do not have a right to take that money via force, which is what taxation is, and then say, we will now give it to all the world's poor. You do not have that right. But that's what we see being advocated. Oh, it's not a crisis. It's fake. It's fake. Well, they changed their tune real quick, didn't they? Going into the 2018 election, that's all you heard. Manufactured crisis. It's a lie. It's a lie. There was one, I think she's a governor of New Mexico, when Trump said, I'm going to send the National Guard to the border. She talked about how racist Trump was. We like our immigrants here. This is garbage. Trump's a racist. Now she's asking for federal aid because there are so many illegals the processing centers can't hold them now. And they're just flooding out into her communities. And guess what? Her voters are pissed. Predictably. And so now, the same person that said this was fake, it was racist, is now saying, oh, by the way, Trump, can you send us some money? Send us some people, resources to help deal with this? We're constantly told this is racist. Racism. You're xenophobic. You don't like brown people. That's what this is about. When the numbers of legal Hispanic immigrants that dislike illegal immigration is high as well. Some polls have Trump's number with Hispanics at this point, eligible Hispanic voters, at as high as 40%. How is that possible for a racist that hates brown people that's trying to keep Mexicans out? Because it's not about their ethnicity. It's about those legals that came here the right way are like, are you kidding me? I spent years. I had to take tests. I had to spend resources. I busted my butt to get into this country. By the way, those people that did that appreciate the country. They came here because they love it, because they want to be part of that. And some of them are awesome, fantastic, great Americans. I've told this story before on my channel. Some of the best Americans I know are immigrants that came here legally, that bust their butt. Some of the hardest working, nicest people I know that know incredible amounts about the history of this country, that respect it, that respect the ideas of individualism and liberty and freedom. They're just as American as me. I don't care what their religion is. I don't care what their skin color is. None of that matters. I don't care what country they came for. You did it legally. You're a citizen now. Congratulations. You're as welcome. You're as an American as I am. Period. Don't care. The government should be working for you also. Those people that came the right way, they hate the fact that, you mean to tell me now I'm competing with this person who just said, I'm going to walk across the border illegally. But none of that mattered. You tried to tell these people that stuff and they were like, well, they don't care. And it's, again, a lot of these people, it's not everyone on the left. There are people on the left that are concerned about illegal immigration. It used to actually be, there was a guy named Cesar Chavez who was a Hispanic labor union leader in California. He used to get union members to basically beat the crap out of illegals on the border because he understood that those illegals were going to directly compete against his union workers and drive down their wages, cost them jobs. That was a left-wing person. It used to be a big left-wing cause back in like the 70s and 80s to be against illegal immigration because it caused environmental damage. There are still a few out there that think that. But now I keep stressing this because I know one complaint I get about my channel, because I do have a lot of left-wing friends. They'll say, you're too overbroad. Well, it's human nature to put labels on things. It's almost impossible to have a discussion without labels. And you don't want to say, well, what am I supposed to do? List every single Democrat that I'm talking about every time I talk about something like that? Or if I talk about Republicans being bad, establishment Republicans, I have to list every single one of them? It's just not feasible. So I always try to stress, I'm not talking about, the Democrat that's your friend. They're not necessarily like this. I'm not saying this. I'm talking about the prevailing orthodoxy in the party at this point. The people in power and what they're talking about. That's the most important thing. That's what matters. That's where the policy is going to be determined. Could you be a Democrat and be against this? Absolutely. I'm not saying otherwise. Anyways, get that caveat out of the way. A lot of these people, though, in the higher levels of the establishment or in the academia that are left and that are coming against legal immigration, it is thinly veiled racism, basically, or I don't know if racism is the right word. I won't say that. Thinly veiled anti-nationalism. They think the U.S. deserves to be punished because it's a terrible, evil place. So it deserves this. They want to see different skin color. They think that's great. Yes, they celebrate. Oh, white people won't be the majority. I could care less, by the way. Don't care at all. Doesn't bother me one bit. That I don't care. Me being white is purely happenstance as far as I'm concerned. I don't care. I won't care that if let's just say this theoretically would happen. A bunch of white people, for whatever reason, don't reproduce as much. A bunch of awesome legal immigrants who happen to be brown come to this country. They're reproducing more. 50 years, those people's grandchildren, they're outnumbering white people. I don't care. Because to me, their skin color is less important than who they are as a person. Their ideas, their actions, their thoughts. They were legal immigrants. They worked hard. They believe in freedom, individualism, they respect the Constitution. Great. I don't care what their skin color is. Doesn't bother me in the least bit. But there are people that it does bother that are white, and I think that's stupid. You see the Richard Spencers or whatever in the world. It's dumb. And there are certainly people on the left that are the opposite. They're like, we want to take the white person down. Also ridiculous, racist, and stupid. So that's what a lot of it is. They know that it'll be a burden, and they lie. One of the things I'll talk about is, and I'll get to the actual specific news, but I do want to talk a little bit about, oftentimes when you're having political arguments or philosophical arguments, particularly, we'll just stick with political, you see that people will make contradictory arguments in an attempt to try to get as many people on board as they can. No one wants to admit, the flaws of their... Almost any position you can advocate for politically, or any politician or any party that you advocate for, will have pros and cons. That's human nature. Almost anything you do in life will have pro and con. Want to go out and get hammered at the bar tonight? Pro. Probably be a lot of fun. Con. Costs a lot of money and you'll feel like crap the next day. Right? That's life. Almost every decision you make has pros and cons. But most people don't want to be honest about it. And so, with immigration, these are two arguments that you hear often that I just find absolutely hilarious. One, it is our moral duty to allow these people to come and work here. That's what we have to do. We have to respect their human rights and treat them like we would treat anyone else. Okay? That's argument one. Argument two. Well, they do all this work that Americans wouldn't want to do. Think of how much the cost of your produce would go up. Think of how much the cost of like home cleaning, which I know if Josh is still in here or anyone that's around the area where I live, it's laughable because it's like home cleaning. Yeah, we do that ourselves because we're not incessantly wealthy, you know. But think of how much all the prices will go up. Now, do you see the inherent contradiction in these two arguments? One, treat them as equals, moral obligation, don't want to exploit them. Second, good thing they're here because they keep the cost of our living down. Do you see the conflict there? In other words, I want to exploit these people because it's beneficial to me because I pay less for stuff. So I want them to be doing difficult jobs at wages that it would be illegal to pay U.S. citizens to do. Because it helps me. It benefits me personally. That's called exploiting illegal labor. You know another group of people that made that argument? Slave owners. There was a very big argument that happened when we were talking about ending slavery. It said, think of how much the economy will be affected. The price of our food, that we're able to compete internationally, sell this stuff so much cheaper. Your food on the plate, what you're paying at the well, I guess it wasn't supermarkets back then, but what you're paying for your produce, your products, like cotton and things like that. Think of how much cheaper it is because we use slave labor. Yeah, that's repugnant. That's immoral. So you tell the people on the left this. Did you realize you just made an argument to exploit these poor people? That's your argument. And then they'll say, oh, no, but it's better for them here than where they came from. Still, you want them exploited. That's what you're saying. Well, no. We should pay them the wages that we pay any American. Okay, then won't the price of all the stuff go up again? If we can't pay an American $15 an hour to pick fruit because the price would be too much for us to buy fruit at the supermarket, then how can we pay an illegal alien to do it at $15 an hour? The only way your economic argument works is if you say we want to pay the illegals less than we feel they deserve. We want to exploit them. So ironically, the very people that are making this argument about, oh, we're morally superior. Oh, we're all for, treating everyone as open borders and leave everyone in. And it helps me. Ha ha, I get cheaper produce out of it. How about I'll pay a little more for my fruit to not exploit immigrants? Now, which one of us is more moral now? That's why the morality argument, let's just, let's not pretend one side's more moral than the other. I choose to deal with facts and logic. It's absolutely ridiculous. Again, it's another double standard. They do this all the time, by the way. Healthcare. I had friends, young people that were friends, when Obamacare was coming out. Free healthcare, that would be great. Oh man, I can't wait for free healthcare. And I was like, you're stupid because in order for this to work, here's how Obamacare had to work, right? Here's how free healthcare has to work. Right now, there is a service. That service is called healthcare. And the problem is, there's a lot of people using this service that aren't paying for it. And so that means the people that are paying for that service are paying way more. Right? And so, what we need is a bigger pool of people that are paying for that service, healthcare, but not using it. That way the people that will offset the people that are using the service and not paying for it. And now the people that are using and paying for the service pay much less. That's how that works. So what group is it that doesn't use health services as much? It's young people. And for Obamacare, all my friends, not all, but a lot of them, it'll be great, I'll have free healthcare, this is great. And I was like, dude, it's going to cost you more. You'll see. No, free healthcare. Then those same people you see 2 years later, I can't believe I have to pay this stupid tax because I couldn't even afford healthcare. Yep. By the way, if you're young and you're buying into all the Bernie socialism, let that be a lesson because guess who's going to pay for that tab? When you run up a tab, guess who pays for it? The future. You think 50, 60-year-olds are going to pay for Bernie's tabs, the trillions of dollars that he wants to spend? Nope. It'll be you, the 20-year-old. That's who's going to eventually have to pay it. So yeah, it sounds good now. Free college? You mean I can go drink for another 4 years for free? Sounds great. Guess what? You're going to be the one paying that in the back end. It's not free. Nothing's free. But anyways, the contradiction in healthcare was this. On one hand, they said, it is disgusting that there are people not receiving healthcare. It is a disgusting, despicable thing. I don't care what your immigration status is. Everyone should be able to get this healthcare. People are dying because they can't go in and get healthcare. And on the other hand, they're saying there are tons of people that are using healthcare that aren't paying for it, and that's driving up our cost. Okay, that's a contradiction. Who are these people? So this whole, like, you get shot and you go to the emergency room and they won't treat you, that's garbage. Now, obviously, I know the argument is, well, yes, but there's a certain subset, like if you need cancer treatment and you can't afford it, and that's a little different. Okay, but, or like the homeless or things like that. But Obamacare, none of the plans that have been advocating solve for that anyways. So it was all garbage. It was all lies. It was appealing to emotion instead of logic. It's the same way the Green New Deal and Medicare for all of it, that's what it's doing. It's appealing to emotion. They don't want to talk about where the money comes from. They want to talk about how, that's fine. If you want Medicare for all, just be honest about it. Your taxes are probably going to go up to over 50%. That's the way it works in Europe. These European countries they talk about. I don't want that system. But if you hear those facts and say, yes, I still want that system, that's fine. That's great. That's what our elective democracy is about. So, yeah, but anyways, back to this immigration, debate. We were lied. We were told, oh, it's not a crisis. We see it's a big crisis. I've been saying, and I'm not the only one. It's not like I'm uniquely a genius or something. No, maybe. But I've been saying for a long time, the reason that the immigration crisis is never solved is that the establishment in both the Republican and Democratic side don't want it solved. Neither do. The Republicans, because it's cheap labor for their business donators. The liberals, the Democrats, because they think it's future votes. And some of them want to see demographic changes and things like that. Or some of them want to see America punished. And so the problem doesn't get solved. Every year, election year, we talk about it, the buck is passed. And 2 years later, we talk about it, the buck is passed. Every time. If they really wanted to solve it, they would do something to do it. But they both like the illegal immigration. Does that mean every Republican and every Democrat? No. But that's the way it was at the establishment level. One of the big reasons Trump won, the biggest reason Trump won was because Hillary sucks. The second biggest reason is probably because of immigration. Because he was the only person that was like, this is a huge deal. And it is a huge deal. Recent polls have come out and showed that both Republicans and independents, and again, take polls with a grain of salt, but this is what they're saying, view immigration as the number one issue in the 2020 election. No one on the Republican side was talking about a serious way to deal with it. Whether it be because they really like the immigration or because they were afraid of being called a racist by the media, whatever. They weren't dealing with the problem. It's clear to see that this isn't sustainable. You can't take 1 million illegal people a year. It can't happen. Especially, now you have economists that I respect, such as Milton Friedman. He's passed away now at this point. I think Thomas Sowell was a student of his who's fantastic, who's still alive. But they're fantastic economically. They just blow my mind listening to them. Check out Milton Friedman YouTube videos if you're a nerd and want to see some good economy videos. Milton Friedman's, although I disagree with him, I think, on this, his immigration theory was this. We should literally take every single person that wants to come to this country. Every single one. But the caveat is there is literally no welfare system. No food stamps, no welfare, no HUD, none. And then we will have a country of the people that want to work hard and are successful will work hard and be successful, and those that don't get no benefits and will be forced to leave the country and go elsewhere. Or forced to get a skill and become successful. But there is no chance that our government's going to give up entitlement benefits. None. No chance at all. And so the idea of we don't need to control our borders is not sustainable. 1 million illegals a year plus 300,000 children they're having. We have no clue by 20 million people how many illegals are in this country. That's absurd. Now all of this, at a time where I can't get on an airplane without being filled up and groped and scanned and this and that. Everything I do has to be, which I was against a lot of the Patriot Act garbage and stuff like that. But I have to be surveyed and looked into, and my rights can be suspect and violated because terrorism is such a big deal, right? So on one hand, if you're like an actual citizen of this country, Your rights to privacy and stuff, done. Sorry. You don't get them. Because the threat of the outsider is so significant we had to give up those rights. But open borders, come on in, anyone. It doesn't make sense. It's a slap in the face. So Trump took it seriously. By the way, I think the best number one thing we should do, and this isn't because I don't think Trump's trying to solve the problem, I just think he's approaching it from the wrong angle. To me, the most successful way to stop illegal immigration is to start holding business owners that knowingly employ illegals criminally accountable. Start throwing people in real jail that own businesses for hiring illegals. I bet they stop hiring illegals. And then once they stop hiring, I bet the illegals stop coming. So I do criticize Trump for that. I think he's approaching from the wrong end. And I do think that he was terrible to sign that last budget that didn't give him money for the wall. But I am in support of the wall. I think we need that in conjunction. And I am in support of this tariff move. So it was funny to see. Of course the Democrats are against it. Of course. One, because Trump did it, so they're going to be against it no matter what it is. You don't believe... Yeah, and people say like, Trump could cure cancer and the Democrats would be against it. And everyone's like, come on. That's laughable. Is it? I mean, because Trump's done things that are like... have been liberal left-wing dreams for a long time. Such as... he threatened to no longer do business with any country that criminalizes homosexuality. What did the left say about that? Oh, he's pandering. That's garbage. That's just a stunt. Criminal justice reform. That basically, particularly people in the minority community really want it. Trump did it. It sucks. It's not good. Trump did it, so... And so, everything's... Obama did better somehow, even though he didn't do anything about it. So, who knows? So, that's reason one, they'd be against it. Second, they don't want to stop illegal immigration. And it makes for strange bedfellows, right? Then Republicans are hypocrites on this as well. The idea of tariffs. And I have mixed feelings on tariffs. I don't want to see them there. I'm for free trade, but that kind of means fair trade. Free trade doesn't just mean, oh, okay, well, if your economic competitor decides to tariff you at 50% and subsidize their products at 50%, you just don't do anything about it, or else you're violating free trade. No, it has to work both ways. There has to be some reciprocity. And so at some point, it is within the realm of still wanting to be a free trade advocate, but understanding in order to be economically competitive, if someone's putting tariffs and subsidies against your products, you have to respond in some way. That's kind of what's happening with China. Also, tariffs could be an effective tool, just like sanctions, to get a country to come to a bargaining table, which is what the Mexican tariffs are about. But it's strange bedfellows because the Republicans, they've been against tariffs most of the time because they're for free trade. The Democrats, though, I mean, it's so funny. They're the ones. That was one of Bernie's big appeals. They were upset because Obama with NAFTA or with the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal that was going to go through, all these unions hated it. Now all of a sudden, Trump's doing what the unions want, and the Democrats still think it's terrible. And you see people like Beto O'Rourke was out the other day, tariffs are costing this country so much money, blah, blah, blah. That's what the unions wanted. They didn't want the fair trade agreement. And I've said that if you're a union member and you're a Democrat, you need to really think what you're doing. Because the things that directly affect you, they want policies that will intentionally ship jobs overseas. The Democrats do. They want policies that will bring in cheap labor that will compete with you. And they want to eliminate some of the most profitable unions, such as energy workers, automobile workers. That's what the Green New Deal said, right? Is that what you want as a union? That's what's coming. That's what the party's done. Because the Democrats, what their party has been about is, you get a group. Once that group's consistently voting for you, you ignore everything they want and move on to the next group. That's why you have people like Charles Barkley, the basketball player. I don't agree with everything he said, but, I saw him once say, you know what we ought to do? Black people ought to just stay at home and not vote for one election, one national election. Because then all of a sudden, maybe at least one party would say, the Democrats particularly would say, geez, maybe we should start advocating policies that would help them. But they don't right now because they assume they have your vote. Just like gay rights. Yeah, every 4 years, oh, gay rights, Trump. What has Trump done against gay rights? Nothing. Somehow that's an issue. He's a homophobe. He's the first GOP candidate to have the rainbow flag flown at the convention. He, like, the law I already discussed, but somehow he's a homophobe. It just makes no sense. Anyways, Trump threatens these tariffs. And the Democrats and Republicans, it's always funny. I one of my mottos, and I'm kind of conspiratorial, one of my mottos has always been, anytime you see the Republicans and Democrats agreeing about something, that's something you should be worried about. It's probably not a good thing. Not always, but a lot of times. It should raise my breath. So, like, bombing Syria, that was a good thing. The establishment Republicans and the Democrats. That was the only time you saw, like, MSNBC and CNN praising Trump. Yay, he dropped bombs on Syria. Now we know that more than likely it wasn't Assad that gassed his people. It was the rebels that staged that attack. But oh well, that death was good. The party of peace, the Democrats, they were all about that, right? Woo! So when they both agreed that these tariffs are bad, you're like, really? And sure enough, Congress won't enact laws about immigration. They won't do anything about the border crisis. Trump tries to do stuff, they complain about it, and it works. Now, I say that with a caveat. We'll see if Mexico follows through. It's still not solved at this point, clearly. But initially, it's a diplomatic success. It's a win for Trump that he had to fight against his own party. Was Obama ever fighting against the Democrats? No. In fact, that's one thing the Democrats do very well. They stick together very, very well, historically. We're starting to see them fracture now because the insane progressives are driving the supposed moderates like Biden. They can't compete, so they have to become insane progressives as well. But normally they'd stick together. Obama wasn't having to fight the Democrats in his Congress for anything, was it? They all seem to stick together on every issue. So Trump had to fight the Democrats and the Republicans. One of the good things that Trump's brought about, there's been a lot of good things, but one of the good things is, as someone who's for smaller government, I think the executive branch has way too much power right now. For example, I don't think that the country was ever entailed to, we don't have to declare war. We could just have never-ending wars because the president decides we're going to invade this place and we'll just say, oh, it's terrorism, we have to deal with it. It's the same with tariff policy. The fact that the executive branch gets to totally control tariff policy themselves, not a good thing. So now you're starting to see big government Democrats that were totally cool with Obama having all this power, now saying, the presidents have too much power. Of course, it's nice to hear them admit that, but what do they care? They're hypocrites. It's not like when the Democrat gets in there, they'll say, yeah, maybe we should limit the power. They're not going to do it. The Republicans as well, though. When they, they're all for smaller government, balanced budgets, this, that, and as soon as they're in the power, what do? Oh, well, now that we're in charge, we want bigger budgets and bigger government power. No, that's wrong as well. So we'll see what happens with these Mexican tariffs, but it's such a joke. The border crisis, it's just, it's unbelievable. Let's see if I have other stuff I could talk about, but okay, like on that theme of hypocrisy, Ilhan Omar has now been found guilty of campaign finance violations. She was ordered to pay $500 and blah blah blah. The gist of it, now there's a lot more to this story because she also, while married to, there's accusations that she married her brother to get her brother into the country, and now it seems that while she was married to one person, she was claiming taxes as being married to another man. It's a very complicated story. So there's going to be way more coming out on this. But right now what we know is she had campaign finance violations. She's ordered to pay back like $500. I don't think this is a big story. I don't care. It's like, whatever. I guess they should be punished and it should be outed and she should be shamed. And it shows that, just like AOC, there's all kinds of accusations that she did shady things with campaign finance. It's good to point out the hypocrisy because the left, particularly the progressive left, are always saying, like, we need to get money out of politics. Money needs to be used in legitimate ways. We need to have transparency. And then the same people that are saying that the loudest, it turns out, oh, they're doing shady things with money, and just like AOC's accused of doing, just like we see with Omar here. But other than that, I don't think it's a huge deal. I don't think she should be kicked out of office or something just for that. However, another reason that it's worth talking about is, remember, Trump needs to be jailed, kicked out of office, blah, 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 blah. One of the reasons why is because campaign finance violation with Stormy Daniels. Now, one, there isn't proof that it is a campaign finance violation. It's a very complicated situation. But second, even if it was, okay, it's a campaign finance violation. And so, when you're talking about Ilhan Omar here, you say, okay, Democrats, you said that campaign finance violations, that's a huge deal. That means people should be kicked out of office. We still don't have proof that Trump did it, but now we have proof after an investigation that Omar did it. So I assume you'll be calling for her resignation or impeachment? Nope, not a word. And as far as the Stormy Daniels things goes, I've talked about this before, but if this was any other way, if this was a Democrat, or God forbid it was a woman, this would be the story. Instead of Trump uses campaign money, to silence woman, the story would be something like this. Extortionist attempts to extort Democrat politician. Authorities get involved. That would be the story. Not that the extortionist was paid. Because that's what it is. Was Trump accused of doing, adultery's bad? I'm against it. I think he ought to be ashamed for that. But did he do anything illegal? No. Was he accused of any sexual crime with Stormy Daniels? No. It was apparently consensual sex. So why is she a victim again? He paid her to keep quiet because she comes to him before the campaign and is like, hey, maybe I'll tell my story. Hey, here's some money. Please don't say anything. Okay. And then she tells her story after getting the money. And she's the victim? Trump's an evil, terrible person for this? Well, the law's the law. Campaign violation, so that's a serious deal. Get him out. Okay. Ilhan Omar, campaign finance violation. Obama had them as well. What they'll say with Obama was, well, it was his team. He didn't know it. Well, Omar, it was her individually, so she did know. But they're hypocrites, so they don't care. But as far as the actual violation, I don't care. I don't want to see Omar taken out of office for that. Now, if this marriage thing comes true, that's a little crazier. Now you're talking about bigamy laws and lying to not only avoid IRS payments, but also lying to circumvent our immigration laws. And that's a much bigger deal. But just, you took money from a pool and used it for gas for yourself. Yeah, that's illegal, and I guess you pay the repercussions of that, but I don't think it's a huge deal. It's just the hypocrisy, like everything else with them. But that unless anyone has any more on that, that's all I have on that. I guess I'll talk about, if anyone has any suggestions, anything they want to hear me talk about, feel free to let me know. I guess the last thing I'll talk about is the last video I did about Mueller and more omissions that he had. And for those of you that didn't watch the video, I can try to summarize it real quick. Basically, Mueller in the opening, and I've given, in my last live stream, I talked at length about Mueller, why he's partisan, why he took all sorts of actions that show that he wasn't actually interested in getting to the bottom of Russian interference. He was interested in getting and smearing Donald Trump in any way possible. That's been proven at every single turn with Mueller. But the way he gave that speech that was winking to nod that he wants to see impeachment hearings, to the way he charged people connected with Trump with the very same crimes that he let people connected with Hillary go, to the fact that he wiped Strzok and Page's iPhone so that the IG couldn't get evidence that might show that they were biased in his investigation, to the fact he was supposed to be investigating Russian interference, but doesn't say word one about the Russians that were the sources for the dossier that his own investigation proved were lies, that were the biggest interference in our election system. So he's a partisan. He's not an independent investigator. He was there just to take down Trump. That's what he was trying to do. And so the next example we see is you had Trump's lawyer John Dowd, who had it's complicated, and I myself, I don't know the legal system that well, so it's hard to understand. But here's what happens: Trump and Cohen were both looking at being legal defendants in a case, and so Trump's lawyer talked to Cohen's lawyer and was like, "Hey, we should exchange information. What should we, what possible accusations or evidence could be," which is perfectly normal for co-defendants to do, their legal teams to do. And then John Dowd says, "I don't mean anything classified or illegal. I just mean things we're allowed to share. Not nefarious at all. That's something very regular, I guess, that's done in the legal world." Yet, Mueller, when he put this section in, left out the part where Dowd, Trump's lawyer, says, "Hey, nothing illegal, nothing confidential, just stuff that we're legally allowed to share." And then used it to imply, see, this was Trump's lawyer trying to, get secret evidence to get, classified information. That was the implication they used. So that was an omission, and they didn't put that they omitted something, right? They just put it like that was his entire statement, when it wasn't. That's a lie by omission. Okay, fool me once. Next, now what I did this video on is, even though Mueller couldn't prove Trump conspired with any Russian to affect the 2016 election. In fact, not only that, he couldn't prove any person connected to Trump or even any American did that. Right? But he still wants to, because he knows that this evidence will get out to Democrats and either leak to the public or just be given to the public like Barr did. He wants to smear Trump and his team as much as possible because I said this from the get-go. Here was what was going to happen. Part of what's going on with the Mueller investigation is once Hillary lost, there was kind of a oh crap moment where their hand was caught in the cookie jar, the intel agency. Oh man, we've been using opposition research that we basically knew we never verified to spy on Trump and people connected to his campaign, leaking to the media to smear them, etc., etc. What are we going to do? Investigate. Oh, Rosenstein recommends Comey gets fired. Bam, special counsel, the very guy that Comey wanted. Woo! And I said from that point, I was like, what they're going to do is try to find any crime, even if it has nothing to do with the 2016 election or Trump. And then use that to say, inevitably, when all the evidence comes out about how the beginnings of this investigation were a witch hunt, were some of the biggest abuses in the history of our country politically, they'll say, yes, but see, we did find examples of shady behavior and crime, so, all is well. Technically, we might have broke a couple rules, but we knew that there was shadiness, so we had to do it. And so in that vein, which is exactly what happened, in that vein, Mueller, if you're looking at the volume 1 of the report, is spending all this time talking about shady Russians. The problem is, most of those shady Russians didn't just have connections to the Trump campaign, they also had connections to the Hillary campaign or to U.S. intelligence services. But they leave that part out. Because if they say that, right, like look at it this way. Let's say there's a known drug dealer in my town. And I'm talking to my drug dealer every day. Oh, that's shady. Rod's talking to that drug dealer. But then you find out, that drug dealer literally talked to everyone because he's the mailman. He talked to everyone in the town. Well, it doesn't seem as shady all of a sudden that I talked to him, does it? It's the same here. It's shady, this failure to register as foreign lobbyists. That's a terrible thing. Yeah, everyone does that. Republicans, Democrats. We know that Hillary's campaign manager, Podesta's, did that with the very same people. But they weren't charged. Manafort was. Trump's campaign manager was. So, what we now see what happened is, there's this Russian that on page 6, right at the beginning of the Mueller report, his name's Konstantin Klemennik, and he's put forth as this, he was charged with basically obstruction of justice with Manafort and their IRS scheme. Nothing to do with stealing the election for Russians, nothing to do with being a Russian agent. And he has said, Mueller phrases him as he has ties to Russian, he's a Ukrainian, ties to the Russian intel agency. And then the report goes on, he's like, he had this peace plan for Crimea, which this peace plan would have given Russia control of parts of Crimea. And so he brought it to the Trump administration, to Manafort, in August 2016. Isn't that shady? Trump's campaign manager dealing with this pro-Russian intelligence guy who's advocating a plan to give control of Crimea over to Russia. There's only one problem with the whole narrative. At the exact same time all this stuff's going on, this Klemenuk character, he's actually a spy for the United States State Department under Barack Obama. He is a highly respected spy. That evidence has shown that FBI agents are saying, like, this is someone we really need to treat special. He's bringing us all kinds of good information. That peace plan that's so shady that he talked to Trump's team with, he also took it to Obama's team. Now, why would that information be left out and instead he's just claimed to have ties to Russian intelligence? There's no explanation of what those ties were. Of course he had ties to Russian intelligence. He was spying on them for the United States. But they leave that part out. Mueller leaves that part out and just says, oh, he had ties to Russian intelligence. So then you're reading it and you're like, well, I guess that looks shady. There's no explanation for why this would happen other than Mueller and his team are trying to smear Trump and paint a picture that just isn't true. If they were deceptive in these two, fool me once, shame on you. That's two now that we see that they're omitting things to intentionally be deceptive to make Trump and his team look worse. So what else did they do? We know they intentionally didn't look at any of the Russians that had connections to Hillary, that had the greatest interference in the U.S. election. We know that. They didn't do that. So why should we trust any of the report? The entire point was, the reason that we needed a special counsel was we couldn't trust Jeff Sessions or people in Trump's DOJ because they'd be partisan. We need someone that would be impartial, that's only going to give us the facts and then leave us make up our own mind. And so you get Bob Mueller, the very guy Comey wanted, who's going to be investigated for crimes for leaking and who hated Trump. And right out of the gate, we can see that he's being deceptive. But trust them. We have to believe everything they say. So I talked about all that in my last video. So some of the pushback you get, I think, is worth talking about. So when I put this on social media places, some of the responses I got were, one, we don't have proof that, because this was from The Hill. John Solomon from The Hill wrote it. Well, one, this is my favorite. I hear this all the time. The Hill is, I actually recommend The Hill. The Hill is left-leaning. It's like centrist left, though. It's not crazy left. But the majority of The Hill's articles and opinion pieces are anti-Trump. They really are. But they do have good opinion pieces that are pro-Trump, and they have good, just flat news, I think, without spins that leaves you make up your own mind. Not every article, but again, overall, I think it's a pretty good site. Every time I cite The Hill, every single time I cite The Hill, and it's something that makes the intelligence agencies look bad, or Hillary look bad, or it defends Trump, every single time, people will just shoot off their mouth and be like, oh yeah, some alt-right site like The Hill. Of course an alt-right site like that. They have no clue. They're just making stuff up. That's now the defense. Oh, they must be alt-right if they're not going after Trump, so that's by definition. That means you're alt-right. No, actually, they're centrist left. So not only are they not alt-right, they're not even right. So that was the first kickback you get. The second is, well, how do you know it's true? And that's, in the most basic sense, that is correct. Because this reporting from John Solomon was based off of documents that he saw that obviously I haven't seen. So yes, with anything, there's always a caveat if it's true. However, he directly named sources and direct quotes, right? So when you hear someone say, sources say that Trump's an idiot, sources say that Trump said this, but that's not a direct quote. It doesn't say who the source is. That's far shadier than when someone says, official FBI documents that I've read said that this guy, Alexander Purcell, said, quote, and then the quote's there. Because if that's a lie, then Alexander Purcell could say, yeah, that's a lie, I never said that. Prove that I said that. I didn't. But Purcell's not going to say that because it's in the document, and he knows he did say it. Or Casimir was another name from the Obama State Department that was listed as direct quotes. Direct quotes from an email exchange between Casimir and Klemenuk. We have those. Is there a chance that it's a lie? Sure. But the same people that are quick to say that are the same ones that will jump on any anti-Trump story from the press that's sourced far worse Doesn't give specific names, doesn't give specific quotes, and they'll say, see, that's true. See, that's true. Why do they believe Mueller? Have they seen the evidence behind the Mueller report? No, they just saw Mueller's report. Everybody knows Flynn talked to Kislyak. Did you hear Flynn talk to Kislyak? No, you didn't hear it. You took the word of someone else. If your only defense of this, and that's the only defenses I've got, well, there's one other. That's the only two defense. Then fine, we'll say this. Okay, you're right, there's a chance it's not true. But if it is true, do you have any defense of it? And of course they don't. And then the last thing is, well, Mueller didn't have to tell us everything. It's okay for him to lie if it was in the attempts to get criminals. Are you kidding me? If Trump puts a tweet out and says, Ilhan Omar said this, even if it's accurate, the entire left explodes and goes, you didn't give the context. You didn't give the context. So if there's exculpatory evidence and Trump didn't give it on a tweet, the left would go nuts. But they have no problem with an impartial, supposedly impartial prosecutor leaving out relevant exculpatory information. Information that shows, oh, the picture that was painted all throughout the media and all throughout this investigation of these people dealing with shady Russians, that's not exactly the truth. In this specific case, actually that shady Russian is actually a U.S. State Department ally and spy for the State Department. That's what the Mueller report was supposed to be. Am I wrong? It was supposed to just be collecting evidence and then putting that evidence forth so that people could decide whether or not crimes were committed. Not intentionally leaving evidence out that you don't like. But some of these people on the left, they don't care. Now, in general, when you talk about, which, by the way, am I some kind of ridiculous genius? I'm writing back in October of 2017 about how the biggest political scandal in the history of this country is going to be that we found out that Obama weaponized his intel agencies to spy on his political opponent using opposition research that the DNC paid for. How that the Russia stuff was garbage, how did I get all that right? Now, granted, we're still seeing about it. But people say, no, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. After I called it that 2 years ago. And it's not just me, again, I'm not saying that. But other people like me that have said it. How is that the case? Well, the people that are calling us out, right? The people that are most vocal about why that's wrong are the same people that told you for 2 years, Trump's a Russian agent, he's going to jail, Kushner's going to jail, Trump Jr. is going to jail, the dossier is true, they know it is, people are going down, Trump's not going to finish his first 4 years. We've seen the evidence that he's colluded, he's a criminal, he's an agent of Russia. They told you that for 2 years. They lied, they were wrong, they either intentionally lied or they were duped by the media and the Democrats that they trust. Those same people now, without having any humility whatsoever and saying, my goodness, I can't believe how wrong I am. I'm ashamed that I was that wrong. Ashamed that I peddled that lie. With such confidence, with such arrogance. Ashamed. Instead of that, nope, they jump right on to, oh, you're going to be wrong. Your prediction will be wrong. Yeah, how about we take what you say with a grain of salt? And I'm not talking about one individual. I'm talking about the press. I'm talking about people you see on social media boards. They're wrong over and over and over and over again. They lied. But trust them this time. Trust them this time. Russia collusion? What? Nah, we're not talking about that. Obstruction of justice. That's what this has always been about. So, yeah, it's just total garbage. It's funny to hear people complain about stuff like that. So, okay, I'll be wrapping up here. I just want to say real quick, if you haven't, you've probably all that are still watching at this point liked and subscribed. But if you're watching this video later at a later date, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helped me out in trying to get to 1,000 viewers. So I think that would be, or 1,000 subscribers. I think that would be great. I'm trying to put out new videos daily, so look for that. I am going to be doing live streams almost every Saturday evening at 7 p.m. on my friend Drone Tech Politics channel. So you can check that out. It's a channel that I'm subscribed to that you can just click and see there. And as always, if you have any topics that you would like me to cover or do videos on, get in touch with me. If you'd ever like to come on the show and discuss things with me, even if you disagree with me, I assure you I'm not going to personally attack you. I believe in having a civil discussion. I might say you're wrong, but I believe in having a civil discussion and things like that. So get in touch with me if you feel something like that. But otherwise, thanks for listening to me, and have a good one.